Welcome back, y'all. This is the Bluechip Breakdown, and we're your host, Bull and P. We're just going to be kind of recapping, a great weekend of college football, man, from Friday to Saturday, taking a look at the top 25 AP poll and just, kind of giving y'all our top 10 as we see it after this week, obviously with several takeaways from some of these big-time ball games. As always, y'all, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. So this is how the AP poll looked coming into week 5. We'll start off right here with Texas at number 1. Now they had a good game, right, versus Mississippi State, and we're gonna pull that up here for y'all right there. So you can see that they won this game 35-13 with the backup quarterback Arch Manning, who I think he's been playing absolutely phenomenal. You can look at his numbers right here: 26 431, 324 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's close to like 84% or something like that. So I think that looks good for them. Also, this is going to be, I think, a pretty big theme for all of these big time teams, especially in the top 10 as we're going through this video. But how can you run the football? Can you run it and can you stop the run? I feel like Texas is showing that it don't matter who they play. Of course, Mississippi State's not a very good team, but they did run the ball very, very well. 31 carries for almost 200 yards, about 6.4 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns on the ground. And look, Arch also had some carries in there too, right? So they've got two quarterbacks that are dual threat that can get it done at a really, really high level. And as you're coming on down here, you can see a plethora of people got some catches in this game. But let's take a look at their defense because I think this might be maybe the most impressive thing, or I don't know what's the most impressive, but this is, this looks really good. So Texas had 6 sacks in this game. Again, Mississippi State is not a very good football team, but if you come back up, right, you can see the Mississippi State only threw the ball like 20 times. 3 times they ran the football 50 times for 150 yards. It's only 3 yards per carry. And it looks like Arch did get sacked. What is this? Twice in this game.
Mm-hmm.
But just all in all, P, I don't know how much you got to watch this game, but what
Mm-hmm.
do you think about Texas overall? As we're just kind of going through this
Yeah,
this
yeah,
top 25.
man. Yeah, I think Texas is the number one team in the country right now. Didn't get to watch much of that game yesterday. I was doing a lot of ripping and running, so I also got a lot of film to watch on a lot of these teams from last night and yesterday. But Texas, man, they're a complete team right now. Even with the backup quarterback, who we all know Arch Manning is very highly thought of. But for them to continue to roll the way they've rolled, came out. I was keeping up with the score of that game, and I know they started kind of slow. It was a close game at the half and all that, but they were able to kind of put the foot on the gas in the second half and get the win. I believe that was in Starksville too. So, being able to go on the road, get your win in the SEC. I think that's a big time win, man. And I think they're a complete program. You see the pass rush is there. I think they have good guys in the secondary as well. They're athletic at linebacker. Their defense is really, really good, and I think the offense. I think their offense will do whatever it needs to do. I think that it can put up the points it needs to put up. I think it's going to be tough for any defense to really hold that offense because they can beat you so many different ways. We know Sark's a mastermind with his play calling, his schemes, his schematics. He's going to have guys open. And as long as they can protect the quarterback and, quarterback can avoid making those critical mistakes at critical times, they're going to be a tough team for anybody to beat this season.
Yeah, I think so too. And as we pull this back up, because we will at the end just kind of give y'all our top 10 as as we see it before it comes out. I think it's set to come out today at 2. Now, actually, at number 2, we've got UGA. And UGA did lose to number 4 Alabama last night. 41-34, something like that.
Yeah.
And really, if you pay attention to the first half of that game, dude, Alabama was very, very dominant. And, we felt like they would be dominant in this game. I didn't think that it was going to look quite the way that it did. I don't think that even their coaches thought that it was going to be that perfect. Georgia just gave absolutely no resistance on offense, defense, special teams. They looked like the worst team by far. They looked like they were overmatched, overpowered. But we will pull up their stats and everything right here from the game. Obviously, it was a tale of 2 different halves because in the second half, I don't know what happened there, and we will get into that. But Bama, to me, kind of seemed like they just kind of eased up some and let Georgia come back into it. So you got to give Georgia some credit for what they did. But just overall, okay, Alabama, man, look, Milroe had, I think, close to 490-something yards in this game of total offense. He threw, 27 of 33, 374 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. He did have 1 interception. To Carson Beck, who, threw the ball 50 times, completed 27 of them. A whole lot of that came in the second half. 439 yards, 3 touchdowns, also 3 interceptions. those were some bad ones too. I mean, several really, really bad interceptions. Now, as we talked about with that running game, you can see that Georgia only ran the football 26 times for 80 yards. It was a very, I mean, it just didn't even seem like they ever got their running game going, maybe in spurts in that second half. But if you look at Alabama's rushing game, a whole lot of that came from Jalen Milroe. Okay, 16 carries for 117 yards, 2 touchdowns. He played great. I think that Alabama kind of got away from that running game. They need to, both of these teams are going to have to find a way to run it well. Now, I don't see that very much outside of Alabama doing it with their quarterback. How much do you want to do that in the SEC? I think that, that's something that they're going to have to be very careful with for the rest of this year. And then, you look at the wide receivers. I think that, both teams had some guys that stepped up down the field. You could talk about both teams' secondaries. I'm looking at Georgia's and I'm saying, man, they look big and they look slow. We told you all this way back in spring. We said, look, their entire team just looks big and slow, but especially their skill players. How is that going to look versus teams like Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss that they've got coming up? How are they going to look versus some of these better teams with some really good athletes out in space? Just because their pass rush isn't really there either this season. And I would just say that, man, I mean, it's been so much talk about this Ryan Williams kid, but he's the real deal, P. Absolutely balled out, 177 yards. I mean, just some critical plays as well. Now, let's come on down here real quick to the stats on defense. Georgia had, let me make sure that's right, 0 sacks in this game, and Alabama had 3. But I don't really feel like either team has just this outrageous pass rush. So I think that as many, as good as that game was, P, and as good as they looked, I still think that there's several question marks about both of these teams in different ways. But what are your takeaways from this game, top to bottom?
Well, I mean, my first takeaway is just the way Georgia came out to start that game. I mean, what 2 weeks ago we saw those guys. Kentucky took them down to the wire, and what we hear, oh, these guys are out for blood. They got a bye week, coming here ready to go. You come out and you get absolutely splattered, 21-0 first quarter. I mean, just knife through butter. I mean, just looked absolutely abysmal. I mean, looked like a team that didn't belong to be playing college football. Honestly, I mean, it was unbelievable how bad they looked out there. And not to rag on those guys too hard, because you know what? As much as I'll be honest, I don't like those guys. Everybody knows it. I can give credit where it's due. The way they fought back in the second half, I tip my hat to it, because they didn't give up. And even the Kentucky game a couple weeks ago, as ugly as that game was, they still kept fighting, and that's something that you got to tip your hat to. This team's not going to go away. They're going to continue to fight, and they have a lot of heart, and they showed that last night. But I think you nailed on the head, man. Like Carson Beck, for one, he did not look very, very good. Did not look comfortable. I mean, he had a few, like you said, very bad interceptions that he threw. It just seems like that offense is out of sync right now. Even going back to the Clemson game, we said it week 1. Everybody looks at the final score and looks at the stats and all that stuff, but we actually watch the game and see what's happening. They were very slow getting started. Had a lot of miscues. Just receivers, quarterback, not on the same page. And we talked about them losing Ladd McConkey and Bowers last year, and people thought we were over exaggerating that, but he had clearly the best rapport of those guys. And I think not having those two on the roster really makes it hard for him. And he just doesn't quite have that rapport for anybody. I think Dominic Lovett is his go-to guy. We kind of saw in the second half, he started getting it going with number 8. I think Colby Young's his name. Big bodied guy, transferred from Miami for him. But I think right now they're still trying to find their identity offensively. And I think it hurts that they can't really run the ball very well right now. I think Alabama does have a really good run defense, but they haven't ran the ball well really at all this season. So I think that's a concern. And then, like you said, on the flip side of it, the defensive line, on the defensive line, I mean, the pass rush isn't really there right now. They don't get pressure really without blitzing. They have to blitz guys to get the pressure, and that opens up things, across the middle of the field. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of holes in this team right now. I think the secondary didn't look great. Like you said, it looked slow. Malachi Starks has not looked great for me this season, whether it's Jalen Milroe, read option. Malachi Starks is the quarterback player, and he's just too slow. Now, Jalen Monroe, I mean, he is a guy, right? He's super fast, super explosive. He'll beat a lot of guys one-on-one, but you expect a guy like Malachi Starks, who people are saying is a top 10 type draft pick, expect him to make some plays in space, and he's not been making plays in space at a high enough clip, in my opinion. And then, I mean, I think they're not tackling well. There's a lot of issues with this Georgia team right now, and I think we saw that in the first half, but to their credit, they fought back second half and showed they do have some heart. So, I respect them for that. But, looking at Alabama, I mean, they looked really good in the first half. I mean, it's tough to really point any holes into what they did. They were stopping the run, played some great coverage, super tight coverage. I mean, the pass rush wasn't really there, but the D line was really strong at point of attack. And the young secondary, who I thought, coming into it was my concern for them in this game. I think they stepped up early. We saw them kind of get exposed in the second half when Georgia was just willing to just throw it up for grabs against those guys. They had a little success with their bigger bodied receivers and stuff like that. But I think this Alabama team, I think their secondary is a question mark. Like I said, their D line, the pass rush, I still don't really see any pass rush from those guys. But I think offensively, man, I think their team, they have some good running backs. Didn't really get it going that well with the running backs last night, but with Jalen Milroe, man, he's the X factor. Can like you saw, can go for 120 on the ground. And then that receiver, man, that was it Ryan Smith or his name is?
Yeah, Williams.
Yeah, Ryan Williams. I mean, 17 years old. I mean, he's it's like you hear about how good he is, but then you watch him and he supersedes your expectation. Like he's
Yeah.
the real deal. I mean, he's the type of guy that could go win the Heisman as a receiver. Maybe not this year, maybe this year, but I mean, he's a guy. He's got 3 years. He's got this year, and then he's got 2 more years left, guys. I mean, he's a Heisman caliber guy.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's up there like with the Travis Hunters, with the
Yeah,
Jeremiah
oh, for sure.
Smiths. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, he
Sure.
is legit.
And
But yeah,
also this too about Bama. Kellen DeBoer, man. I mean, if you look at the two teams and they came out, you saw kind of showed Georgia Kirby Smart. He was
yep,
kind of shaking in his boots, like literally was shaking,
yeah,
like shaking. Kellen DeBoer was so calm, which I expect him to have some nerves, but he was super calm, man. And I think if you're a Bama fan, you gain a lot more confidence in him as a coach just from his
mhm.
demeanor and the way he carried himself, the game plan he had coming into this game, jumped out the way he did. I mean, I think he's going to do just fine at Alabama. I don't think they're going to drop off from Saban at all.
No, I mean, I don't really think so either. And it's going to be a little bit different because I do think that when you look at Alabama's defense this season, it doesn't play with that same type of an edge. But at the same time, if you look at the offense and the defense, what I noticed is both of their systems, right? It seems like it's simple for the players, but it's going to be complicated for you to kind of like game plan for, which is why you can see some of these true freshmen coming in and balling early on, just because it's very, very simple. So I think that helps. Like the players will be able to play with a lot more speed because they're not having to process and think. Whereas, with Saban, I mean, you can call it however you want to, but the truth is, a lot of times whenever they were losing, it was just because there was some busting coverages and things like that. It's too much thinking on the fly based off of this and that. I mean, you saw what Bama did on defense last night. It was a whole lot of man-to-man coverage. Now they did switch it up some in some, really nice spots too, where they was able to kind of trick back into throwing some picks, whether they switch to a 3 or switch to a 2, but they're showing, man. So whenever you keep it simple with that much talent, P, you're exactly right. I don't think that they're going to drop off too much. It's going to be a lot easier for them to bring in players that can play very, very early and I think do it at a really high level. But at the same time, I think that with them being so simple, on defense, having some of those young players out there, I think that they will get exposed versus a few of these teams have got some veteran type guys that have a little bit more of a complicated scheme. And if we know that you are playing man coverage, we can, I mean, run a whole lot of different things. Tennessee's going to be one of them. Texas is definitely going to be one. So, I think that
Mhm.
they'll have some challenges from that standpoint. Also, if you can't have some sort of a pass rush versus, that caliber of team, what are you going to do, right? Because I do kind of feel like there are some teams on defense that will match up a lot better versus Bama than Georgia did. We saw Georgia starting off trying to load that box up. Then they moved to that 3-3-5. They're dropping everybody back in coverage. Something that I found pretty interesting is that Alabama could still throw on that. And what they did is they were throwing it deep, and Georgia just could not cover it up. So it's just it's kind of similar issues I feel like for both teams.
Mhm.
But I think that there's some bigger glaring issues with Georgia because if they can't run the daggum football with their scheme, I mean, it's gonna, they're not gonna just be able to throw it up for grabs, versus some of these other teams. Whenever they start off slow, they
Mhm.
get down big early. You're not going to be able to do that versus teams like Tennessee that's got a great pass rush. If you're just dropping back and throwing every single time, they're going to pin their ears back and they're going to
Mhm.
get to you. And we're not just going to sit in man-to-man coverage. We're going to keep on mixing things up. So I think that they've got problems from that standpoint. I think that Alabama's, like we talked about, need to find some other threats to run the football outside of their quarterback because you just cannot trust that throughout the entire year. He's going to
Yep.
take a whole lot of hits. He's a big, strong, fast, physical guy, but this is the SEC. I just, well, I'll be interested to see how things kind of play out from that perspective. But just well, you know what? I'm gonna wait. I was gonna ask you how far do you think Georgia drops? Actually, yeah, you know what? Let's go ahead and talk about that. How far do you think Georgia drops from this, and how far do you think Bama's gonna move up just based off of the AP polls, Pete?
Man, I don't think Georgia drops out of top five for sure. They might not even drop out of the top three. I mean, they literally might bump them to three and bump Bama to two. I mean, I could just because they end up being a close game, I could see them not dropping them more than two. They're not gonna. I don't know. I mean, we obviously have Tennessee there. It's gonna be interesting. They're definitely gonna stay in top five. You know, we'll
Yeah.
get to our top 10 later, but I mean, I think they'll stay in top five for sure. In my opinion.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So we already know that Bama won. So the next one is going to be Ole Miss. So man, Ole Miss loses to an unranked Kentucky team. And P, I just want to know, do you feel like Kentucky is for real, or do you just think that
No.
maybe Georgia and Ole Miss were a little bit overrated and maybe overhyped?
Yeah.
Because I mean, look, man, we saw South Carolina just took it to Kentucky. So do you
Mhm.
think that maybe South Carolina is a little bit better than people are giving or have been giving them credit for, especially with their starting quarterback? I know I just kind of threw a
No,
whole
yeah.
lot at you, but what do you
No.
think overall with that?
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't. First of all, I don't think Kentucky is a great team. I think they're okay. So I don't think they're as bad as they look against South Carolina, but they're not as good as they looked against Georgia or against Ole Miss. I think it's more like you said, Georgia's overrated, Ole Miss is overrated. Because like when you watch Kentucky and you're not necessarily supposed to use the eye test, but when you watch them play, like they're not athletic. Like I mean, there's nothing there. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
should do every one of those guys. Now, whether is that their scheme, is that their coaching? Are these guys just are they keyed up and know what's coming? I got to go really watch the game and see. But I mean, for me, and we talked about this when we kind of watched. We're watching this game live, Ole Miss Kentucky. I think Ole Miss, I mean, they're just an offensive team. They don't really have a defense, and they don't really have a line of scrimmage. And that's despite the guys they brought in from the portal, Walter Nolan, some other guys they brought in up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They just still don't play a physical brand of ball. You can see here from the rushing yards, 92 yards on the ground, 3.2 per carry. I
Mhm.
mean, you only have two guys outside your quarterback that ran the ball. I
Yeah,
mean,
and hey, listen, they only ran the football with their running back 4 times in that first half. You
wow.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that, like, if you want to play SEC football, you've got to be able to run and stop the run. And we told y'all that was going to be
Mhm.
a common theme in this video.
Yep.
So, to your point, Pete, looking at Ole Miss, not being able to run the football and not really having a defense, they're putting up all these crazy numbers versus, I mean, sisters are the daggone poor. I mean, I'm not impressed with them by any means. They're not who I thought that they were going to be. And I thought, hey, look, maybe this team can challenge Georgia. I don't feel that way at this point. They might lose a couple more ball games this season. If you look at their running backs, they're not very big. I think that their best guy that, probably runs maybe the hardest, he looked like he was banged up. We don't know, who else do they have? They don't have no big bodies. They're not getting a nice push, and they're not utilizing their running game at all. But
Mhm.
yeah, you know,
No. Yeah, no,
go ahead.
you hit it on the head, man. I mean, I think this is a team. I mean, they're not physical enough, and kind of to your point with them only having four rushing attempts in the first half. Like you said, you got to be able to run the ball, you got to be able to stop and run. Now, Kentucky controlled the ball. I think Ole Miss had the ball for like. I mean, they didn't have very many plays in the first half because Kentucky had some long sustained drives. They
I
were just
want
able
to
to
say it was something like 17 minutes to 8 minutes at some point. It was something
yeah.
like that.
And the game finished with that same ratio. I want to say it was like 41 minutes for Kentucky to like 20 minutes for Ole Miss. Like they were 2-1 time possession, man. So it's tough to win like that unless you're scoring. Like kind of you've seen Heupel get away with that a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
time possession's skewed, but I mean, heck, we're scoring in two plays. So if you're doing that, then that works. But if you're not scoring, you're putting up 17 points and you lose time possession like that, you're gonna have a hard time winning games. And we saw that Ole Miss lost a bad one at home. I think. I mean, they should have lost that Kentucky team. But I mean, like you said, they're gonna lose a couple more. I think. Now, I do think they could still give Georgia a challenge just because the offensive prowess, I mean, it is there. And we talked about Georgia's lack of pass rush. Their secondary is not elite, and their run game is not elite. So can they even really hold the ball against Ole Miss? I don't know. We'll see. But I think you have to be able to run the ball a little bit to be able to compete with Georgia. If you're one dimensional, it's going to be tough. But I mean, I still have that as a game I have circled on my calendar. It's going to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I mean, it should most definitely be interesting, but it's crazy because Kentucky only ran for 93 yards on 47 carries, but like you
Mhm.
said, they just ate up so much clock. you've got to have a defense that can get off of the field. And just kind of going back to that Georgia Bama game, that was really Bama's problem in that second half. Georgia, I mean, they were going forward. It was four down territory every single time. I don't know if they punted the whole second half, but you got to be able to get stops and get off of the field. And those types of things, I don't see that out of Ole Miss's defense. They've got some guys, but from top to bottom, it's not a whole lot there that you say, man, they've got a really good secondary, this, that, and I mean, they've got some guys up front. They've got some real dudes. I'm not impressed at all with their linebacking core. It's literally just their front. Outside of that, it's average. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Everywhere else. So that's a team, man, that I don't have too much faith in them. I definitely expect for them to drop a pretty solid amount coming out of that one. So let's see, who else do we have? Actually, I want to talk some about Miami versus Virginia Tech. And that was a game on Friday that, crazy game. You know what I'm saying? I think that Miami, I still feel like they've got a pretty solid offensive line, but they are another team that just does not stick to their running game nearly enough. Cam Ward is definitely special. He can make things happen, but he's going to throw you, one or two possible interceptions every single game because he's a daggum gunslinger, very confident. Sometimes I think he plays a little bit too laid back. He needs to play with a little bit more umph, but I mean, that's a game that just shows and proves that it doesn't really matter who you are. You can go down. But do you think, just kind of based off of how close that game was, P, that Miami could maybe go down or maybe move? I mean, I don't know if they would move up, but do you think that maybe they could come down some based off of how they played on Friday?
Um, I mean, I think they could, but you got to look at who else lost that's already behind them. I mean, I think they probably should go down a little bit, but
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, they'll definitely still be in the top 10 because I think some teams some teams behind them lost, but I mean, I would drop them down because, in honest, my opinion, they lost that game. I mean, I think Virginia
yeah,
Tech got robbed there in that last play, but I mean, I still think Miami's a good team, though. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna just throw them to the wolves and say this team's done because they had a close game against Virginia Tech. I think they are still a good team. They are still gonna make some noise in the playoffs, I think. But I mean, I'd probably drop them a spot or two.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I will say, I mean, I didn't really get to watch that game because I was working when that game was on. So I had it on my TV, which was right outside my office, so I could kind of hear it. And when it got down to that last couple minutes, I was watching it then. But so I'm not really sure exactly how it went. I mean, look at that's the rush yards there. Hold on, was that the rush yard? Oh no, that's the total yards.
Yeah,
Uh,
so these are the rush numbers
okay,
right here.
so I'm one for 165, 5.2 a carry. I mean, Cam Ward's the truth. I mean, when you have a
Yeah,
quarterback
yeah.
like Cam Ward, you're gonna be in every game you play because he's gonna be there. You know what I mean? He's
That's
the
the
real
thing.
deal. Um, you know, so I don't know. I mean, I know they got to get running back. That Martinez guy is supposed to be pretty good. I think they got him from Oklahoma State or Oregon State, or they got him somewhere.
Yeah,
Transfer guy. Like I said, their O line is really good, man. They got some big maulers up there. And from what I could see, man, I was surprised to see Virginia Tech. And you look at the numbers there, the pass numbers, didn't look like they threw for that many, but watching it live, it sounded they had a lot of kind of big plays in timely situations. It looked like the quarterback drones was just kind of scrambling out and just able to find some guys open. So, leave some question marks about how good their secondary is and kind of how good is that pass rush.
yeah,
They'll see. I don't think they'll be testing much this season. I'm not sure what their schedule looks like. Talking about
mhm,
Miami, but
yeah.
it's gonna be tough when they play some real teams from the SEC and Ohio State teams like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that they should be able to just kind of roll through whatever their schedule looks like in the ACC because those teams aren't great. But at the same time, when you look at this score, I mean, it was very, very close. So I think that they just need to kind of tighten up in a couple of areas, and we'll see. My biggest thing with them is that, man, Mario Cristobal, I don't trust him. I don't think he's a very good coach. This honestly is a game that Miami should have won by 20 or 30 points. So I think that that's going to be their ultimate probably downfall whenever it does come to some of these better teams. They probably will make it to the playoffs, but I don't have too much confidence that they're going to be able to do too much more unless Cam Ward just completely and totally takes over. So I also want to talk about Utah because Utah also lost. They lost to Arizona, who is unranked, and they lost that game 23-10. Now Utah still doesn't have Cam Rising, so how are they going to look once he comes back? Do they still have a chance to win that Big 12 and make it to the playoffs? Of course they do, because the Big 12 is just wide open. It's a lot of teams out there that, I mean, I don't think that really any of them are very good. Like they're just all kind of like the same amount of terrible. So, we will see how all that plays out. I'm gonna pull these stats up for y'all here in just a second. All right, so boom. So we'll take a look at some of these numbers, and you can see, man, that Utah kind of got away from what they normally do. Okay, they threw the football 40 times in this game, and they only were able to complete half of those. So 20 of 40, they threw 2 interceptions. Just not who they normally are. You stop their running game, like we talked about last week, y'all. If you can make them throw the football more, if you stop what they like to do, which is run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, then they're not a very good team. They're very, very beatable. So they ran the ball 29 times for 84 yards, only averaging 2.9 yards per carry. Then when you look at what Arizona did, 19 of 31 for 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. They ran the ball 26 times for 169 yards, 6.5 yards per carry. And that's, I mean, again, if you can run the ball, like whatever team can run the ball, whatever team can stop the run, is who is going to have the better opportunity to win, especially come playoff time. In Arizona just kind of exposed who Utah really is from that perspective. But P, I know that you probably weren't able to pay any attention to this game at all. I'll also just throw in here real quick that Arizona had 3 sacks in this game and Utah had none. So, again, it's not just about can you run the ball, can you stop the run, but can you protect your quarterback and can you get to the opposite team's quarterback? But what did you think, or do you have any takeaways from this game right here? And really, what do you think is going to happen to Utah? Are they going to drop all the way out of the top 25, or do they just barely kind of, fall down to maybe number 15
Yeah.
or something like
I mean, I think they'll definitely drop significantly. I think they'll be in the top 25, but they're going to take a big drop. Probably out of the top 15. Probably maybe even out of the top 20, but they're going to be in the top 25. I think. I think obviously didn't have Cam Rising, who's been there for years, but he hasn't been there all season for them. They've never been to win games up to this point, but like you said, man, kind of shocking. A Utah team, one thing you expect to see from them is a physical brand of football on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Looks like like I said, didn't watch the game, but Arizona 6.5 yards per carry on the ground. I did not expect to see that. And then Utah only having 3.2, whatever it was per carry on the ground. I mean, you don't expect that. So it seemed like this game was more than just 2.9, and that's awful. So it seems
that.
like this game was more than just the quarterback, but at the same time, maybe that's why. Maybe they knew the quarterback couldn't really get it done for them, and so they stacked the box, put 8-9 in the box, and said, "Let's see if this guy can beat us." And maybe that's the game plan. But if that's all you got to do to beat a team, then that team is what we like to call one-dimensional. Now,
Yeah.
is that because Cam Rising isn't there? I'm not sure. I don't know what their receivers look like or anything like that, but definitely concerning. And yeah, I expect them to definitely be outside top 15 after this one. But
Yeah.
I will say too, I think Arizona's a solid team. I know the quarterback doesn't look like he went off, but I know he's a good guy. And then they got that receiver, forget his name, I don't, something. I think it's number 4. He's really good. There he is, McMillan. So I
Uh-huh.
know they got some guys, and they're a better team than people realize, and they should be a top 25 team too, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. So that's very interesting that you bring that up because maybe now they bump up into the top 25 after that win over Utah. Now let's take a look at who else we have up here that we want to talk about. So Louisville at number 15 loses to number 16 Notre Dame 31-24. And I didn't really get an opportunity to pay too much attention to this game. And it's one that I really did want to watch, and I'm definitely going to go back and kind of take a look at that. And we will have our top 10 for sure, like towards the end of this week after I get an opportunity to take a look at some more of these teams. But I think that Notre Dame is a team that you just can't necessarily sleep on as far as the playoff picture goes. I mean, they had a really bad loss, like a couple of weeks ago, and they don't have too many people left on their schedule that have an opportunity to beat them. I think they've got maybe Georgia Tech left. I don't know who else would even be close to challenging Notre Dame. Their schedule is very, very weak, but this was a big one for them to, win, obviously, over what I think is a pretty solid Louisville team. Now, you can see that Louisville did a good job passing 24 or 41. I mean, that's not great numbers, but 264 yards through the air. Again, they weren't too one-dimensional. They ran the football 34 times for 173 yards. And then you look at what Notre Dame did. They threw it, 17 for 23, 163 yards, 2 touchdowns, then rushing 29 carries for 120 yards, about 4.1 yards per carry. So if you really look at these numbers, I mean, it looks like Louisville maybe played better. You know what I mean? It looks like
Yeah.
they might have been a little bit more dominant than Notre Dame was. And Notre Dame's supposed to have a really, really good defense. I think now, again, just going off of these numbers, maybe it's a little bit more suspect than people are kind of like letting on because people are saying, man, their defense is absolutely unbelievable. They had
Mhm.
3 sacks in this game to Louisville's 1. So just kind of like looking at that. I don't know if you got a chance to
Mm.
watch any of this game or look at any of the
Mhm.
highlights, P. But what do you think about this right here? Do you think that Louisville would drop too much, or do you think that Notre Dame is going to get pushed up? I think that they definitely, if they only lose one game, they're in the playoffs. I mean,
Mhm.
it would take some sort of a miracle for them to
Oh
keep
yeah,
Notre Dame out of the playoffs if they're anywhere near it. But yeah,
yeah.
what do you think about how the
Me too.
rankings might shape
Um,
up off of this? Yeah,
I don't know. Can we click on the team stats real quick? Let me see how the
yeah,
totals looked. Because this is an interesting match because it does look like Louisville. I mean, it looks like they were just way better. Let's
yeah.
see, it doesn't have total yards. Oh, there's total yards. I mean, yeah, they almost doubled them. Well, not almost
Mhm.
double. I mean,
Yeah.
437 to 283 was the first downs. They don't have the first downs on first downs
Yeah, so
19
first
to
that was
11.
19 to 11 for Notre Dame.
I mean, I don't know. So just looking at it, I didn't like I said, I didn't watch this game live, but I mean
Mhm.
Notre Dame puts up a quick 21 points. Um, and then they kind of were kind of slow the rest of the game. It might be a deal where they kind of just hopped out on, maybe got a few lucky breaks early or something. I don't know. Two
Mhm.
turnovers. I mean, even there. So I don't know.
Mhm.
This game I definitely got to go watch and see, but it doesn't look like Notre Dame was just overpowering these guys or anything like that. It looks like Louisville may have been the better team on the field. Um, but just somehow found a way to lose it. So I mean, Notre Dame, we'll see how the committee looks at this. They'll probably bump up maybe a spot. They might flip them in Louisville. But Clemson's been looking pretty good lately. I think Clemson's at like 17 right now, so they
Mhm.
may end up bumping up to 15. Maybe Louisville drops 17, something like that. I think those three teams will kind of be in that same little hosh posh there. Yeah. So I don't know, but I think Notre Dame, like you said, man, they don't really play a ton of people. I'm pretty sure they play USC. I think they play USC every year. So USC's look pretty good. So if they get that win and don't lose any other games, I think they're in for sure. But yeah, there's not much left on the schedule, so I think they will find a way to stick into the playoffs. But I think they'll be top 15 after this week.
Yeah, so you know what? Shoot. If they do play USC, I think USC would definitely beat Notre Dame.
Oh, they should for sure. They
So
should.
yeah, so that would be, I mean, more than likely that's one more loss. If Georgia Tech can give them a ball game, I can see Georgia Tech maybe taking it to them also, but
Yeah.
we will see. So yeah, I mean that's gonna be interesting. Now let's talk about number 19, Illinois. They lost to number 9, Penn State. That game was 21-7. I don't know how much will Illinois drop, if they will drop or if they should drop. Won't go, you know what? I guess we can take a look at those numbers. This is my whole thing, honestly speaking, y'all. I really want to focus more on the teams that I feel like actually have some sort of a chance to,
Hmm.
make some noise in the playoffs. I don't see either one of these teams as a chance, as a team that has an opportunity to actually go into the playoffs and really beat any of the better
Hey,
teams. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
let me ask you this one, interesting one. So we saw OU um, got the win against Auburn in a
Mhm.
game that they were losing big time. Everybody knows the history of their injuries. They got like four or five of the top receivers out, whatever it is. Probably still got some guys out on the O line. They got a new quarterback who they think is going to give them a little surge there. Is OU a team? I'm not sure what their schedule looks like, but is OU a team that that playing behind that defense, they start getting some of those receivers back? Is that a team people should be worried about as kind of maybe backdooring the way into the playoffs? Can make a run down the line.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think absolutely not. And you know what? We will talk about them in just a second, but we'll just kind of like skim through just so that y'all can see how the numbers look for both of these teams. Very very run heavy. Okay, for both of
4
these
yards.
programs, and it looks like it was just a classic, like a classic Big Ten type of a game. So yeah, I mean, I don't see those teams necessarily having the skill players necessary to be able to compete with any of the top tier guys. I just don't see that by any means at all. We will get to, I think I had one more that I wanted to get to right here. So we got Oklahoma State loses to Kansas State 42-20. That should take Oklahoma State, in my mind, I mean, do you drop them all the way out of the top? I mean, I would drop them out of the
I
top
would.
25.
I
I
would.
don't think they ever should have been there. They're
Yeah.
they're pretty much frauds. Kansas State, they're a decent team. I'm not impressed with them either by any means. So again, we'll focus a whole lot more just on the top 10. But P, I do want to talk some about Oklahoma versus Auburn yesterday because I did get a chance to watch that game. We can pull those stats up as well. I might have been watching that one a little bit closer than any other game. But yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I think that whenever you look at Oklahoma, their offensive line looked a little bit better versus maybe the second worst team in the SEC, Auburn. I mean, Auburn's absolutely terrible. And really, Auburn should have won that game, right? I
Yeah.
think they was up by like 2 scores late. So I mean, they throw a really bad interception.
Pick six.
Yeah, that was a pick six, and it
Very good
brings
play right
Oklahoma
there.
right back into that game. But whenever you're looking at these numbers, Auburn threw, and I mean, I don't
Wow.
know this for sure, but I can almost guarantee you they have not thrown anywhere near this the entire season. 320, 338 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns. I mean, their passing game has been just absolutely abysmal. You see what they did to that Oklahoma defense that everyone is saying is really good. And of course, as Tennessee fans, that makes us look better. But I just want to kind of like call it like it is. I think that Oklahoma's defense is is average at best. Now they have really good schemes. I think that they've got a really good coach. They've got a few good players, but people are kind of overhyping them. I think that they're going to get absolutely waxed versus some of these better teams moving forward.
Mhm.
Just because how they play Tennessee, they can't play everybody like that. And whenever they have to play straight up, what I'm seeing is man to man, their guys are getting pushed around. All of them, they're all just getting pushed around. If it's not for their secondary pieces making a ton of tackles in every single game, see, look, you see both of their safeties are at the top of their tackles. Their linebackers really aren't doing what people think that they're doing. Let's see what sort of a pass rush that they have in this game. Looks like they had 4 sacks, so that looks good. Again, it's versus a really bad Auburn team. You see that Auburn had 2 sacks. I just think that they are not ready for the SEC. I don't think that they're built for it. Their quarterback. Let's go up and see what he did. He only threw the ball 15 times, 10 of 15 for 161 yards, which those are good numbers. Didn't have any touchdowns passing. He also ran the ball 14 times for 69 yards. One of those was on a really long 48-yard scamper to kind of like start the game off. I know that was in the first quarter. So he looks good from that perspective. But who are
Mhm.
the other running back threats? They have no real running backs. That looks a little bit better. 18 carries for 61 yards, 3.4 yards per carry with 1 touchdown from Barnes. But who are the other guys? Again, the offensive line just isn't great. Auburn's not great. But
Mhm.
Oklahoma, you got to give them credit because they were able to find a way to get that win in this game. I think that was a really nice scheme where they were able to kind of throw off Trotter and make him think that somebody was open who actually wasn't. Same thing that we did to them with Jackson Arnold. But I don't believe in this Oklahoma team by any means, Pete. But I mean, like, what are you seeing from them that makes you think that maybe they could kind of backdoor their way into the playoffs?
Well, just going by, they look pretty fast, pretty physical against us. Now, I didn't see a ton of this Auburn game, but looking at the stats is pretty alarming that Auburn has so much success passing and running. I mean that's pretty alarming. But their team, they just continue to find a way to win. I think even against us, we know we let our foot off the gas, but for them to even continue to fight and bring that score back closer, make it look better than what it was, I think it says a lot about a team. And that's one of those kind of unquantifiable characteristics of a team. You can't really put a number on it or a value on what heart really means. And I think this team has a lot of heart. I think they're going to play hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know that they have a lot of guys out. And so if they do get their receivers back and maybe a few O-line pieces back, does this team look much different? I think about Tennessee because we know them better than any other team. If we're missing, we'll say Spraggins and Coop, for example, right?
Knock on
Two
wood.
of our key guys. So yeah, I got knock on freaking wood, but two of our key guys, as well as a bunch of receivers, knock on wood. How much different does this team look? And we would know all along. Hey, once those guys come back, we're gonna be a way different team. We would know that, but other people would know it because they don't know that team the way we do. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know if that's what this is with Oklahoma, but I think they're finding ways to win. I'm not sure who they have on the schedule. I think it's pretty tough. I know they got Texas. I think they got
They've
Ole
got a
Miss,
very
which
tough schedule.
will be a tough one. If they have Ole
Yeah.
Miss, that's gonna be an interesting game. I think they got Mizzou.
They
I
got
think
they got South Carolina.
they got Bama. They got Bama. I think Bama. I want to say
Yeah,
South
maybe.
Carolina. So that's I
They
mean
have a tough schedule. I
they
don't know
do.
if they're going to win any of those games. Like
Yeah.
I just, you know what I'm saying. Honestly speaking, I can't see them. You know what I'm
I
saying.
can't see it
So
either
it's like,
unless they get guys back.
yeah, and I don't think that even then because it really still all starts up front. And Tennessee showed that, but Tennessee's very
Mhm,
dominant. They won't see another front as dominant as Tennessee's is on defense. But yeah, I mean, they had all their guys back in that one. I think that they rushed them back, and
mhm,
hopefully they can get back healthy, really soon because they will need everything. All hands on daggum deck. But yeah, no, I mean, I just think that up front, they're just not ready for this league. They just aren't,
definitely.
but again, they did get a win in the SEC on the road. That's not easy to do, albeit versus probably the second worst team in this entire conference. We will find out a lot about them moving forward. Now, I also want to talk about this Arkansas versus Texas A&M game because as volunteer fans, of course, we were all just kind of scouting them and trying to see what the heck's going on there. And P, did you get an opportunity to pay attention to any of this game? Have you kind of like watched Arkansas some? scouted
Nah,
them to see what to see what you think about them yet?
I didn't even get a chance. I kept wanting to. I believe this game was on at the same time as the Michigan Minnesota game.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't know, my wife's a big Michigan fan, so she had to watch that freaking game. So I missed it, but I'm gonna go back and watch it for sure.
Okay. All right. So we will go through these numbers here real quick. For Arkansas, passing 23 of 41, 279 yards, one touchdown, one interception. Now, this kid, Taylor Green, for those of y'all that don't know, 6'6", 230 pounds. He transferred in from Boise State. He's a bigger guy that's got a good arm. He's fast, but he's not shifty. Yeah, his arm is big, but he doesn't have a whole lot of arm talent. He's not the most accurate guy. So I think that he could be kind of scary because you're like, oh man, he could do this, he could do that. But whenever you really, really watch him, okay, you understand that he's lacking in some areas that Tennessee should really, I think Tennessee should be able to get some sacks in this game. We should be able to kind of stop what he likes to do. And we already know that Coach Bobby P, who was at Texas A&M last season, so we've seen his offense here recently. We did a really good job of kind of shutting down what they like to do. I think our defense is much better, but they do a really nice job, I think, of coming out with a good game plan so the offense looks good early on. But I mean, almost every single game, it does not fail. Once you get about midway through that second quarter, the entire team really starts to sputter, especially
Mhm.
on offense. And a big part of the reason for that is they do not stick to their running game. If you look right here at their running numbers, 30 carries for 100 yards. I really do like their running back Jackson. He's a big guy. He's a physical guy. But you see, I mean, he didn't do a phenomenal job running. I think that A&M did a good job of kind of balling him up. And then they've also got this number 0, who is a true freshman. He's about 255, 260 pounds. He's kind of like a bowling ball guy. He does run hard, but he should be kind of easy for us to tackle. It's just not a whole lot that you look at with their team that you get scared about. Let's look at
Hey,
their wide
hey,
receivers. Yeah, go ahead.
that big
Go ahead.
number 0. I wonder if that's a guy because I know Tennessee was recruiting a kid last year, running back. Is that him? I think that's him. And it's between us and Arkansas. That must be him, Braylon Russell. I gotta go look him up, but I wonder if that's that guy. I don't know if he was that big, 250. I know he was big coming out of high school, and I know we thought we were gonna get him, but that's okay. It's a lot of kind of Tennessee connections
Yeah.
here in this game. Addison Nichols, Nico
Uh-huh.
Slaughter, now this guy. I
Yep.
think it's gonna be an interesting game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so too because they've got a guy on offense and on defense that you know that they're going to be trading some of those secrets, trying to
Mhm.
find some ways to wear down what Tennessee likes to do. I'm just going to kind of finish going through these numbers here real quick. This as far as the wide receivers. This guy right here, Andrew Armstrong, who had 6 catches for 72 yards, 6'4", about 200 pounds. He's really good. I like his game. He's shifty out in the open field. They've also got a wide receiver that's like 6'7". He's got a ton of drops so far. So they've got some guys that can go down the field. It's not anything that we haven't seen though. They're big guys, they're fast guys. Typical SEC. Then when you talk about their defense, I like their scheme. It's a 4-man front. They're going to try to stop the run first. Their guys up front. This is going to be the first, inside of my mind, true SEC defense that we faced. They've got some guys that can play. Not a whole lot of pass rushers, not a whole lot of twitch. I really like their linebackers. I think this is going to be the best linebacking core that we've seen so far this season. And they play downhill. They do a lot of things to try to trick you, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, let's see what they had 3 sacks in this game, and looks like Texas A&M got 3 sacks on them. So, A&M was able to run the football pretty well. They ran it 36 times for 137 yards. And they were 50% as far as passing goes, 11 for 22. And they do have a redshirt freshman in at quarterback that's nothing like Nico. So I think that whenever you look at Arkansas from top to bottom, yeah, they could present some challenges. But this is a team that if Tennessee comes focused and ready to play, we should be able to beat them up and down the field. I think we should have
Mhm.
success pretty much doing whatever we want to do. We'll be the best offensive line that we face. The offensive line is good. We all know that Sam Pittman is maybe the best offensive line coach in the entire country. That group looks a lot better than it did last season, but still some question marks there. I think that we can beat them off of the edges with some speed, especially on blitzes. They don't do a good job of IDing those blitzes in different fronts, so they get kind of thrown off there. But yeah, this is a game that we just have to make sure that we can contain Taylor Green, and as long as we do that, I feel very, very confident with our chances to be able to beat
Well,
that team. But
well,
P, do you have any final thoughts on Arkansas? Just like kind of like off of the first glance, I know that you said that you haven't really seen them, but just
mhm,
based off of what you saw there from those numbers and what I just kind of
yeah.
said,
Well,
anything
yeah.
that
I
maybe
mean,
sticks out to you?
well, just kind of quickly talking about our matchup against them next week. I think we know Ashton Nichols. Okay, he's a guy that was on our roster, loved him to
Yeah,
death, was very high on him coming out of high school, but a guy that couldn't, for whatever reason, just couldn't quite crack the field for us. So I think that this staff knows who he is, and I think he's not a guy that obviously wasn't good enough to start for us, and probably wasn't even good enough to back up Cooper Mays. So I think watch out for a lot of pressure up the middle of the field, and not necessarily that we're blitzing, but I mean Big E, Big O, Omar Normal, those guys, Eason,
James Pierce. Oh,
James
oh yeah,
Pierce.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
we
Yeah,
I'm talking about the middle. I
yeah, yeah,
think the
middle.
middle of the field, the pass rush is gonna be on fire. I think next week, and if you can get pressure up the middle, especially on rushing four, that's
Yeah.
ball game.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel very confident about that one.
Mhm.
So again, just got to hope that the players come in focused. That's all they have to do because this will be a challenge in several different areas. We're gonna have to play disciplined football, but as long as we do that, as long as we play clean, I think that we should put up some really, really nice numbers in this one. So let's go ahead and get to our top 10 right here, P. What do we think is going to look like? I'm going to remind everyone this is what the AP poll currently looks like. But P, who do you think is going to be number one?
I think it stays unchanged. I think it'll be Texas number one.
Okay. All right, so you got Texas at one. I'm going to say that I think that they're going to put Bama at number one. I think that they're going to jump everybody. Um, and I'll actually let you, or I can go first, and then you can go. I'll give you what I think. I'll give you my top 10. So I'm going to go number one, Alabama. Number two, I think they'll probably put Texas. I think number three will still be Ohio State, but I could see a world where maybe they put Georgia at three and move Ohio State to four because Ohio State hasn't played anybody. I mean, Michigan State is an okay team, but they still suck. And everyone else that you see, if you just look at this top five, I mean, everyone outside of the Buckeyes has their strength of schedule is just way better. Okay, so I think that there is a world where maybe even Ohio State could drop down to number five. But I'm going to go again. Alabama at one, Texas is at two. I'm going to go Ohio State at three. I'm going to go Tennessee at four. Tennessee should be at four. Then you put Georgia at five, especially if you're looking at the way that Georgia got blown out in that first half. Yeah, they kind of came back, but we all know that Alabama was backing off and kind of, letting Georgia run that clock out. So I would say that Georgia should be at five. I want to put Miami at six. Oregon is at seven. Penn State's going to be at eight. I'm going to go with Mizzou at nine. And at 10, I'm going to go with Michigan. So Michigan kind of cracks their way back into the top 10. But P, what does your top 10 look like?
Yeah. I think that's pretty much the same. I think we just differ. I have Texas at one, Bama at two. Ohio State's at three. I think the committee. I mean, they haven't done anything to move down. I mean, they haven't played anybody, but they've been pretty dominant, at
Yeah.
least final score wise in those games. So I think they'll keep them at three. I do think Tennessee will be four. I think Tennessee's a team. Obviously, we love them obviously, but I think a lot of the media, for whatever reason, is pretty high on Tennessee this year, and I think they do want to keep bumping them up and get them up higher and higher. So I definitely think Tennessee will be four. Georgia will be five. Like I said, I don't think they drop out of the top five. At six, um, I might go Oregon at six, and Miami stays right there at seven.
Okay.
Eight is going to be, I think Penn State stays there at eight. I like Mizzou at nine, and I do think Michigan probably will be number 10 this week.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, pretty much the same. Just a few differences there. I think it's going to be, obviously we had some teams lose. I mean, Ole Miss, I think they dropped down pretty significantly. Outside the top 10 for sure, maybe even outside the top 15 maybe.
It's good.
Only thing that helps them is we had some teams lose, like Illinois lost. Who else lost? I'm not Illinois. I mean, Louisville lost.
Mhm.
Um, Utah lost. So there's teams that lost that are gonna help them maybe not drop as far. But I think they take significant drop, and I think Utah drops. I think they drop out of the top 15, maybe even out of the top 20, but they stay in the top 25. I think so. I mean, it was a great weekend of college football. I think with all this conference realignment, we're getting more games that we want to see. And I mean, hey, tip my hat to the Alabama Georgia game. We heard a lot
Yeah.
of chatter early in the week about, oh, this game doesn't mean anything. That was a completely media made, man made narrative. No one
Yeah.
believed that in real life. I mean, who just made that up? And we saw these guys fight to the freaking last second of that game and prove that game and everything to those teams. So tip my hat to that, man. It's gonna be a great season. And hey, stay tuned because I think Vols will be on top here a few months.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's most definitely coming. It's looking like right now, as long as both teams handle business, that
Oh,
Tennessee Bama game. Dude, I mean, that could be number 1 versus number 2 or number 3. We'll see what happens with
So
Texas coming up versus OU.
who's your we'll say maybe your top five that you think of, not worry about ratings and all that bull crap or rankings, whatever. Who do you think's the best, like the five best teams? Because right now I would have Texas at one.
Mhm.
Um, from what I've seen, I'd probably have Tennessee at two. Okay. Bama would be three for me. Probably Ohio State would be four. And I don't know. I mean, the fifth team, I mean, maybe it is Georgia. I would love to put Miami there, but I don't know if I can trust them. And it might still be Georgia at five for me. Pretty much same as my AP top five, honestly.
Yeah, you know what? I think that mine is probably the exact same. And it's just really, if you look at it, and how we like to look at it is what teams can actually win the whole doggone thing. And again, you have to be able to run, stop the run, get after the daggone passer, and then stop the or block the pass rush. And yeah, I mean it's Texas and it's Tennessee. They've shown that they can do that the most consistent out of anybody else. Is especially going up against teams that have some sort of a pulse. Maybe you could say that the Buckeyes have shown that, but heck, I mean, they ain't played no daggum body. Got the question marks about Bama, got a lot of question marks about Georgia. But outside of that, I mean, the question marks just amplify so much for everybody else. Probably at number 6, I would have Miami, but a whole lot of questions about them as a ball club. I mean, Oregon, I got a ton of questions about them. Penn State, I mean,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
it's just I think that the cream is rising, like, it's maybe it's not
Yeah.
as much cream, but it's right up at the top, and it's a pretty significant layer between that top tier, maybe 1 and 2, than it is between, all the way down to top to tier number 3. So, yeah, I think that, it's definitely Tennessee and it's Texas, but we will see. And I'm probably gonna, again, I think maybe on Thursday, maybe Friday, I'm gonna go through, watch all the film, and I will give you like a little bit more like concrete top 10 for me. But yeah, so far that's about what I have. But that's gonna be it for this one, y'all. Thank you so much for sticking all the way to the end. And please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.